it's uncomfortable to talk about this stuff. And when people with resources feel resourceful and can do things like, I'm going to step into the family business and I'm going to run it and I'm going to take it to the next generation, or we're going to sell it. There's a lot of good. It's interesting when you say transition, because a lot of owners or people come in and they think there's this one binary way, like generation 2 has the business now and then generation 3 is going to take over. And that's not necessarily what's right. There's a really fine line between how do I honor this legacy, but also continue to grow it and modernize, not making any assumptions about what someone else wants and giving permission that things can change.
Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill. When was the last time that you thought about, strategized about, or talked openly about the transition of your family business? If you're scratching your head or the answer is not recently, well, then you're not thinking about it enough. And that's where my guest today comes in, Andrea Carpenter. She is the incoming president of the Transition Strategists and a next generation leader who lives the complexities of business succession firsthand. As both a next gen in her own family, a successor in a private business, and an advisor to transitioning families, she brings unique insights into the delicate balance of preserving legacy while embracing innovation. As your next gen friend, Andrea loves creating authentic spaces where rising generations can write their own stories while honoring their family legacy. I hope you enjoy this episode with Andrea Carpenter. And in the meantime, I really also hope that you subscribe to this show and maybe share it with a friend, because it gets the word out about family businesses and helps us all to thrive. So please welcome Andrea Carpenter. Well, welcome everybody, and welcome Andrea Carpenter to the show. I'm so grateful you're here today. I'm excited to dig into your story.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to learn a little bit of an origin story for you. So you grew up in the world of family business, with your dad as a first gen, and now you're in the world of family business in terms of helping other family businesses in a variety of ways. Let's take that all the way back to the beginning, and I'd love to hear your story about just how everything started with you.
Yeah, so my parents, let's see, we were pretty typical family. The first moment, a lot of next gens, right, can look back at like, what was the moment I kind of realized maybe our family was a little different? For me, it was in high school. I was like, hey, Dad, I'm going to fill out the FAFSA for college. And he's like, you don't need to fill out the FAFSA.
Oh, really?
And I was like, am I really not aware? Like, what did I miss or whatever? But my dad, he was an entrepreneur from the age that my sister was 2, built this really successful software company. We did all the things that kids do in family businesses. We went into the office and we helped sort the papers and organize the kitchen and just familiarizing ourselves with what is kind of business in general. Mm-hmm. I think the coolest thing that my dad did was really just encouraging me, and I have 2 younger sisters, to just, what are you most excited about in life and how could you make money doing that? Right. And so my dad, from the beginning, in high school, I was like, hey, I think I want to do graphic design. Okay, well, what are the things that you would need to do to make money at graphic design? And I put together this little business plan proposal, and these are the things I'm going to do. And I think I need this software and this computer. And those are the types of pursuits that my dad would kind of help fund and encourage us to do. But I started making my own money in high school. And from there, it was kind of, I'm going to do graphic design. I'm going to make my own money. I'm going to be entrepreneurial. And there was never really this moment of I felt any pressure that my dad was like, do you want to come in the business? And I look back at it now and we have discussions about it now. And he was like, I didn't think that any of you wanted this. So he ultimately decided to sell. And now the involvement is we have our family limited partnership. And so it's a very different type of family business, but still any investment or any family income, how do you keep the family together as you move from one generation to the next? So I have that experience with my dad and my family. And then you kind of mentioned I am just purchasing and buying into this business called the Transition Strategists, which helps family businesses do the same thing. to transition from one generation to the next. And in a sort of meta way, I'm now the successor in this business. And we're like, technically, we're not a family business, but when you have values of putting people first and caring for others, there's a lot of crossover. And so, kind of that lived experience of being the person to step into the business, which has been fun as well.
Right. Well, I imagine too, through transition specialists, by the nature of your business, you're dealing with a lot of family businesses in general and helping them to transition either to the next generation or in whatever ways they want to transition. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting when you say transition because a lot of owners or people come in and they think there's this one binary way, like generation two has the business now, and then generation three is going to take over. And that's not necessarily what's right for everyone. So it's really this people first approach. How do we make sure as we look at a transition, what is every single person want? What's going to make them excited? What's going to help them feel fulfilled? Because I think if someone walks on the other end of a transition and they don't feel good about it, or they're like, oh, why did I do that? Or that feels so wrong, or I'm not happy, or I can't believe my parents forced me to do that. No one wants that resentment.
Right.
And so it's really navigating that people side of transition that we really kind of focus on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I can't wait to get into that part of it because there's so many things that go into that. And you're so right. I think there's a tendency for family businesses in particular, and I can speak from experience on this, that they think there's really only one way to pass it on, and that is through succession, and that anything else is just a vast change from whatever they've done in the past, and they shouldn't go down that direction. But there's more than one, and you help people navigate that. But what was the company that you mentioned your dad started a software company? Do you mind sharing a little bit about what the company was, what they did?
Sure, yeah. It was enterprise healthcare software, kind of like data integration. My dad became one of the top, I don't know, he had to be one of the top 5 guys in the world for healthcare data standards and things like that. He ended up just a very interesting path. His life's mission was he wanted to live in the mountains. So when I was 2 years old, the whole family, which was just me and my parents at the time, we moved to Montrose, Colorado, which is a pretty small town on the western slope. My dad started scaling his business there and ran into kind of normal problems in a town that size. Ooh, I think it would be so fun to live here. I'd love to work for you. My wife is a petroleum engineer.
Right.
What can she do?
Right.
No, there's not too much for her to do. So when I was in 5th grade, made the decision to move back to Dallas. He took on a business partner, and together they kind of grew the company. I saw my dad really care about culture. He really cared about people. It was so fun watching him do his journey, and then also really enlightening watching him go through just the ups and downs and the feelings around, are we going to sell? Private equity, what are the options, and just anything that a business owner goes through as they navigate that process, in addition to the personal side of it, right? And now there's going to be this big event. How do I set up my estate? What are the trusts? All these pieces. I was only really in high school and college at the time that all of this was happening, so you don't really get all the pieces, and I didn't watch it live, but I can look at it back in retrospect now. The types of things he went through as he was talking with the lawyers and thinking about setting up all these like tax advantaged types of pieces. It's a whole big world, and I think that an approach where you can look a little bit holistically about where you're trying to go. I mean, that's what all your advisors are trying to help you do.
Right.
Really, is just make sure that everyone feels good coming out of the other end. And since then, my dad has been very open. I watch him. He's in Tiger 21 and some of these other groups. I watch him compared to some of his peers in that group and how just open he is sharing with our family, particularly me and my 2 sisters, but also our spouses. So as we get married, we all get what's called his PD, or his portfolio defense, and he runs through, here's the business. And so treating every asset in the family as part of the business and bringing us in and having kind of those family discussions and those family meetings and how is he communicating those things, and how are we able to participate in, should we go into this investment? What does that mean? Really just such a good educational tool for all of us to learn about the world of all of this. So someday when it's ours, we can be better stewards of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You rarely hear about situations where a parental figure is that open about that with their young kids. And it sounds like you being the oldest child, it sounds like very open with you. Were they just as open with the younger siblings as well? And how did that look? How did those conversations go when you were in high school, when they were already planning those? What were some of the three biggest takeaways that you got from it?
I think it's all age appropriate, but in high school, I remember things. My dad's a big Jim Rohn fan.
Yeah.
So we would watch these little Jim Rohn goal setting videos, or he would give us $100 bill, like, okay, what percentage of money should go to this or this or this, or how are you going to fund this? How are you going to finance this? Just like helping us understand what money is. We all had kind of a little investment account. So to use part of his gifting to get some money in an account. And do you want to learn about the stock market? Do you want to learn about all these pieces? And to even see how that has grown and enabled my husband and I to purchase a house. Like I recognize what a great gift my parents gave me, not just the learnings but also like the outcome and the things I've been able to do because of what they prepared. So I think there's that mindset piece. There's the openness and communication, really being willing to talk with us about it and answer any questions. And the inclusiveness, like this is our family, this is our culture, this is what we do.
Yeah.
What it looks like now is my youngest sister turned, I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was when she turned 21 or 22, but it was like that's when you get like the full version of all the numbers. And then you get engaged and you might get a little bit, but you have to be married for your spouse to get the whole thing. So he kind of had these milestones built in. My dad is a big, I don't know, he just has a process, right? So he likes to give his whole portfolio defense that he gives to Tiger to us. He wants to give the whole picture. Really, there's obviously the monetary component, but it's a lot more about what is his mindset around money? What does he think? I mean, we all know the stats, like how many businesses or even families lose their wealth after certain generations. Like he's talking a lot about this, and these are stories that I heard when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And growing up, and that is influential. And sometimes you're like, oh gosh, my dad was really successful. He did all these things. Like, how am I going to do something that lives up to that or is as good as that? And so you have to not remove yourself from that, but figure out how you fit into the pieces and can continue living that legacy while also really writing your own story as a next gen. And I think that my parents really helped me I can look back at it now, like in the trenches, I was like, ugh,
Right.
Do they even support me at all this? But I can look back at it now and I was like, I had so many paths in front of me. I was never really forced one way or the other. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think my parents did a great job with that. And I hope to do the same with my kids.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into kind of the next generation, because you're the second generation of this wealth. And I'm curious, you talked about it as the gift of what they gave you, which is the gift of knowledge about it, the education, the vulnerability and the openness about it. Was there any, but did you receive it that way? I mean, as far as when you grew up and you saw, and you finally began to realize what was being built here and what the wealth looked like, how did you see that? How was that internalized by you? I mean, did it affect you at all?
I think I've always viewed it as my parents' money.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted to feel entitled to that money. And I never saw it as mine, but also I want to be smart and I want to, like, I know it's also a gift to my dad. I think it took me a while to get here, but now I can look at it. It's a gift to my dad for me to use it in a way that is like helping me be a better person or helping me make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. Like that's the reason he worked so hard. He did all these things so that I could have this opportunity to now I'm stepping in and I'm buying this new business.
Right.
I do this education. I'm in mastermind groups like Abundance Women. I'm able to do all of these things and leverage kind of the opportunity that he's given me with that. But if I never have to pull from money that my parents are passing down and I'm able to kind of just grow that and be a good steward of it, and someday that's there for someone else if they really need it,
Hmm.
that would be the ideal situation for me.
I love that answer, and I hope people listen to it because it's so insightful. I've been thinking a lot about entitlement too, and there's an association, of course, a lot of times, especially in mainstream media, around family businesses and entitlement. I mean, you see the show Succession or Arrested Development. I mean, and all of that stuff, kind of the undertones of entitlement are there. And I also looked at what brings about entitlement, and I see that a lot. I feel like a lot of times the mindset of entitlement comes from a place of scarcity, not abundance, and we almost handle it wrong because a lot of times parents battle against entitlement by not communicating like the real thing, the reality of their money situation. And I think that just actually breeds more entitlement because I feel like the opposite of entitlement is resourcefulness. And so you have scarcity on one side, abundance on the other. And I hear in your story that you took whatever that gift was and made it and were resourceful with it. And that was a mindset of abundance that is, going to elevate that and change the world. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think my parents, I'll have to ask them someday. Did they walk in with like, this is what we're trying to teach our kids? I think it was be respectful, be a good steward, take care of other people. Like when you instill good core values like that just in your family system, it's really it helps kind of guide like whatever direction. I mean, I think I'm the entrepreneurial one in the family. I work the most close with any of my siblings with my dad on kind of our investments and looking at the portfolio and pieces like that. And my husband has kind of come along. He has an interest in that. My middle sister went into teaching and now she's staying home and she's watching my daughter and her daughter, and like what a gift that is for our family for her to be able to do that and also do other stuff that's fun for her. And then my youngest sister went into healthcare. She's a social worker. And so just three very different paths, but three girls with such strong good values who just like want to walk through the world and help other people, and use resources in a way. I think we all recognize like what a gift that has been, but also that we could leverage that in a smart way.
I
So
love that. That's so great. Right. And so talking about kind of how your family's limited partnership is structured now, because your dad sold the business and now all the assets are in a limited partnership. Can you tell me about that and how that was structured, why it was structured, and how it works now?
I have seen a lot of a lot of the legal diagrams from the lawyers and all the pieces. Basically, how do we move assets into the right places and
Right.
reduce that tax burden was kind of the initial structure of it all.
Hmm.
Now my sisters and I have a percentage of that limited partnership, and my parents have the rest, with kind of this plan that everything that my parents are planning to give to us is already kind of passed down and there for us, and the rest is my parents to donate and use, as they want for through the rest of their lives. So that kind of get to die with zero
Yeah.
mentality is the remainder of it. And I think within the limited partnership itself, my dad is making investments in the portfolio, but he's talking with each of us like, hey, is this exciting? What about this? Do you want to look at this investor deck? A lot of times you're like, yeah, that's 50 pages. I maybe don't have the interest or the
Right.
understanding completely of, but to even get exposure to that, knowing that someday that is the world that we're going
Right.
to live in. It's not like someday my parents die and then it all goes poof. Like that is going to continue on, and we're going to need to know how these things work and how they operate so that we can make whether we decide to sell everything off and split it, or we decide we want to keep growing it together. That's something that I think my parents are preparing us, and we're having conversations about, are we ready and prepared to be able to make that decision and move together as a team
Hmm.
someday. So I would say it's really structured around, let's just keep everyone together.
Yeah. I and that kind of gets into the question about, you talked about the idea of kind of balancing that legacy with writing the next chapter. And there's a lot of, the popular phrase is, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in three generations, right? Now
Yeah.
you have the third generation would come after you, of course. But how would you be protecting against that and really setting your kids up maybe for success to handle that in the next generation?
My daughter's 8 months old, and I'm already like, what lessons do I need to be
Yeah, right.
teaching
Yeah.
her?
Here's a book on investing. Yeah.
I'm like, my parents did such a good job. I'm like, how do I replicate that? Or did I walk away with something that maybe my relationship with money is a little weird there, or what would I not want to pass on? Because I want to honor my daughter and my niece. They're the only two in Gen 3 right now, but I want
Mhm.
to honor them as people and who they are and what their interests are, but also to teach them like what things are and resources and how we use them and what that looks like. And yes, we can work really hard and get these things and help other people. So yeah, as I think about that, it's partly, if I never spend the money, then the money's still there for the next part. So I that's part of my mentality.
Mhm.
But also I would need my kids to kind of walk away with that same strong foundation of, probably most importantly, how do we stay together as a family, and how do we communicate as a family about what we need, what we expect, where we're having troubles, what's exciting to us, what's not exciting. Because I think when people feel fulfilled and happy, that money is just an amplifier of the good and the happy, not the struggle and the things that are
Yeah.
hard for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I see the challenge a lot in the later generations, like third, fourth, fifth. Of course, every generation you add a certain level of complexity. And with that complexity is an exponential growth in family, and sometimes, often, most often, a linear growth in the wealth in the business, and that's what kind of leads to a lot of the dissolution of a lot of that wealth. Second cousins just don't often want to talk to each other. So
Yeah.
are you baking, like, is it baked into that idea that it's okay to maybe separate it out or sell it off and then maybe just take our own piece of it and then start our own legacy? Or what are your thoughts kind of going into that of protecting against the idea of maybe making it too diluted down the line?
Mm. That's a good question. And honestly, I think just something that we're going to have to keep a pulse on as we move forward. Right now, we have this really strong family unit when we think about the things that my parents are giving down, like a place for us to all gather together. It
Hmm.
was something that was important to my parents. Vacations that we can all take together. I think those things have been way more important than assets that we're passing down, is the time that we can spend together.
Right.
And the money right now is kind of just allowing those things to happen. And so it is a discussion that we will definitely have to have as we move towards the future. I think part of that is already built into the legal structure, that eventually the trust splits and there's some amount that goes directly into each family's bucket to use as they please. But there
Hmm.
is still kind of this portion that we're going to have to figure out what we want to do with, and what feels best.
Yeah.
And that gets tricky as, oh, well, you had three kids and you only had one, and but I'm 5 years younger than you and I'm
Right.
7 years younger. Like, there's lots of discussions and feelings and things that come up as you start to get into the logistics of how all those things work.
Yeah, it's always a hard conversations, of course, but always necessary. I mean, those transitions are important. If you're a family business owner or operator and you're looking to get more control over your business, I would love to talk with you. I want to give you a special invite to request a free 90-minute workshop with me to learn the powerful tools of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Just shoot me an email at adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. Again, that email is adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Speaking of transitions, I do want to get into the transition strategists that you're the company that you're a part of, that you've bought into and invested into, as I understand, with some of the resources that you've built. Tell us about what that company is, how you got involved, and yeah, a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So another cool just thing about having parents with resources is the people you get to meet, and I'm so grateful for that. My dad introduced me to Elizabeth Ledoux, who founded the Transition Strategists 25 years ago, and she's just been helping private and family businesses navigate succession plans, basically more the people side
Right.
of those plans. And when I first talked to her, I had this big vision. I had just left my full-time job and I was like, I'm ready to start my own company. And these are the things I'm thinking about. I love kind of working with next gens and thinking about next gens and kind of that, what's your legacy? What's your story? How do you navigate being in a successful family to really feel fulfilled? I think my parents gave me such a good path, but I've done a lot of design work and thinking around how could I help other people do this. And
Right.
I started describing to her, I want to help next gens. And these are the 5 things I think I can do. And she goes, I already kind of have something sort of like that. And I don't even have resources right now to actually run a program like that, but it's something that does exist. Like, would you be interested in coming in as a partner to think about it? And I said, sure, let's explore
Yeah.
what that might look like. And the more I get to know her and I got to know her company, she did a lot of cool things from the beginning. We have a tool called the IMAP. So what is my natural wiring? She's really this like creative developer visionary. She's our company's visionary. And I really sit in this kind of my natural wiring is I want to take an idea and then refine it and figure out how to make it better and how to essentially maximize the value out of something.
Yeah.
And so when she said, I have this thing that works really, really well for businesses who are transitioning, I just need to figure out how to scale it. And I was able to sit down and put my fingers into that. It's like I felt my shoulders relax. Like, oh my gosh, this is the type of role. No wonder trying to build something on my own was really weighing me down. It was feeling really hard because naturally I'm wired to kind of step in to that refiner role. So this has been a really cool opportunity to come in to her business. And as she thinks about where she's going and potentially exiting in the next 5 to 7 years, we're still working through our exact timeline, but she knows her husband's going to retire and she wants to have time with him, and that's her next adventure. And so we started talking about what would it look like if I came in as your potential successor, the person, kind of heir apparent, for lack of a better term, for the business. And it's been a fun thing, and I've learned a lot and about the lawyers and the legal documents and all the pieces. And obviously they kind of facilitate the deal, but it's really the terms, right? That someone coming into a company when you're kind of purchasing it, that you need to agree on all these scenarios. You have to talk about it. And it's probably similar enough to a family transition that I can definitely sympathize with anyone who's coming in and kind of stepping into that leadership role after someone before you, to say, oof, there's a really fine line between how do I honor this legacy, but also continue to grow it and modernize and bring things in at the right piece. And it has just doubled down my passion for helping successors and helping next gens just feel really good about the work that they're doing in the world.
I love that. So it goes beyond legal documents, obviously. I mean, that's an important part of structuring the deal, but really when you talk about terms, what I'm hearing there is like, now we're getting into all the emotional stuff the stuff that really matters, the relationships, everything that goes on and survives, and the strength of the structure. And that's where you're coming in and trying to build that. Are you helping companies with the succession planning from ownership, or is it leadership, or some combination of both? How does that look when you're helping out a business?
Definitely a combo of both. We really want to start with the people because if you're an owner or a successor and you are not sure exactly where you're going, there's no point in even starting discussions and talking about legal docs.
Right.
Before we ever got to the legal docs, we have a tool called the objectives matrix. So we each wrote down, like, when we think about our life over the next 10 years, what are the things that we're excited about? For me personally, for me and my husband, for my daughter, she wasn't even born when we started, but like the goal was, I want to start a family.
Right.
I want to start a family. Like, what kind of role or job is going to help me actually do that? Like, that's a non-negotiable. If I'm in a position where I can't also focus on my family, I don't want it. Like, I'm not interested. And if she was like, no, you have to work 120 hours a week, I could have walked
Yeah.
at that point and I would have known that it wasn't a good fit. And she would have been like, oh, yeah, she can't commit the time that we need for this position. So it's laying out what I want, what she wants. I already talked about the IMAP, what our wiring is. And then as you think of components of the business, what are all of those components of the business? Who are all the potential successors in play? In our case, it was a little simpler, but when you think about a family, there's, especially in later generation family businesses, as you know, there might be more than one person who's potentially, like, who's going into a CEO role, who's just in a board seat. Is it a voting seat? Is it not a voting seat? Are they stepping into the business? Are they completely leaving? You really want to map out what the current generation thinks is going to happen or who they could see stepping in, and then kind of cross-reference that with what those people actually want instead of making assumptions. And then there are financial components of this. Like, when you think, is it a gifting strategy? Is it ours is structured as a buy-in percentage?
Right.
Is there some upfront? Is it financed? What does all that look like? And that ultimately, once you answer all of those questions, that leads to, okay, so how do we actually transition this business now? And by the time you've answered all those questions, you'll usually find there's not just one path. There's 4, 5, 6 paths that you can take. And you can say, okay, which one is going to best serve all of the people that are involved in this transition to help everyone feel good.
Yeah.
And feeling good does not mean I walk away with everything that I wanted exactly as I described it in the beginning, but our relationships are still together. The family's still whole. People are doing things that's exciting to them, and everyone gets to move to what we call the next adventure. So for me, the next adventure is I've started my family and I'm stepping into leadership. And for her, the next adventure is she has someone to help her scale and grow the company before she's ultimately ready to leave and live her next adventure with her husband. So it's very cool. Yeah, it's a fun process and lots of pieces, but really you see, I think it's that people piece, like feeling like everyone's together and heard is really the value and the beauty of a process like that.
Yeah. It sounds like, even though there's a lot of moving parts, it sounds like you have something of a framework there that you were calling the IMAP framework. Is that right?
So the IMAP is just one piece. This whole framework I kind of just described is called the Transition Roadmap Developer. So
Gotcha.
Elizabeth has been kind of looking at that over the last 25 years. That's kind of been in development and ultimately learned. She wrote a book called It's a Journey, which kind of outlines that process, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's that combo of there's a framework you can follow and then lots of stuff that comes up along the way. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, how do I actually invite my successor in? Or how do I actually tell my dad that I don't want to stay in the business or I'm ready to leave, or what that looks like, and kind of support with each of those people components
Right.
along the way, in combination with you got to have your CPA and your lawyers and all these other advisors that you probably already have. We can just bring all of those pieces together and help you make sure that you're getting that cohesive big picture.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then as far as when I guess the question I would have is when do companies usually start working with you, and when should they? As those are two different questions because I know a lot of times they don't come soon enough, right?
Yeah, there's usually some kind of event. I had a health scare, or my son or daughter is like actually pushing me. Like they actually want an answer, and now something is like a little bit more urgent. We definitely help, and we often work with families that are going through this. The best time is what would I say? 5 to 10 years away from thinking about leaving, because it's really, you're flying a plane and you take off and you need to know approximate coordinates so you can go in the right direction.
Right.
If you're trying to fly to Canada and you start heading towards Panama, that is not, that there's going to be a big circuitous loop to go back around. So we can
Right.
make sure we're all at least moving in the same direction. And then as we get closer to the end, you can start to pinpoint in and dial down a little bit more. But I never think it's too early, especially when you're talking about family,
Hmm.
to come in and have really open and honest conversations about where you think things are going. And you might think, and oftentimes we see owners who think that they're doing this, but then in the end, the successors are like, oh, they said it was going to be 4 years.
Right.
But then 4 years have passed and you haven't thought about that conversation since. But the successor is thinking about it every single day. And they're like, well, when is it actually going to happen now? So you want to be very thoughtful also about the types of things that you're saying in conversation, so no one has an expectation that doesn't match in that reality.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's always, I think that's always the biggest challenge too, when you see owners at that age, then the that the thing that screws things up the most is when there's false expectations, or the reality doesn't meet those expectations, or the number isn't there, or what have you. So what do you wish that business owners knew, or that they did 5 years before they were going to make that transition event? Like what aside from calling you, obviously, what is the big thing that would make the biggest difference?
It's really honoring the people, not making any assumptions about what someone else wants, and giving permission that things can change
Hmm.
at any point. We might set our paths a certain way, and then someone changes, or there's a health event that changes, or someone's family grows, or someone's husband gets a new job and they decide they're going to move somewhere else. Like, people are people, and you have to honor that. And things can change. And so the earlier we start to set those base expectations, whatever that looks like and feels right for you and your family,
Hmm.
the easier it is down the line to kind of pivot and keep people together, versus kind of this moment where there's some type of crack, or something where things start to break apart and you haven't laid that strong base or that foundation for how you communicate, and just like honoring each person.
Right. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I love, and I'd like to kind of go into your other project that you're building alongside this too, which is you call yourself the next gen friend, which I love that. I love that phrase. And what was the thing that drove you to call yourself that, create that, and what are you building there?
Yeah. So I was just in a conversation with someone and she's like, well, it seems like you have a lot of excitement around that piece. And I was
Hmm.
like, what do I really want for successors? Like, I just want them to know that they have a friend. I said,
Hmm.
I just want to be like your next gen friend.
Yeah.
And the name kind of stuck. She started sending me texts with the hashtag. And I was like, maybe there's something here, because when your family has wealth, especially like later generation, especially like for me, it came later in life. Like, I had a lot of identity. I made it all the way through college before my parents ever had their kind of wealth event.
Hmm.
When something like that happens and suddenly your world is tilted, and you're like, oh, there's things here, and there's a perception either money's good or money's bad. Money buys you things, money doesn't buy you things. Does it give you opportunity? Are you entitled? Are you a bad person for keeping this? There's all these questions that start to come up, and you're like, it questions your identity. You're trying to find your place or your role. You might compare yourself to your parents or the generation before you.
Hmm.
There's just stuff that comes up that next gens deal with that I'm like, actually, these are just because our families have wealth, and it doesn't even necessarily mean I have wealth. Just because someone's family has wealth doesn't mean that they're less of a person, or they don't need support, or they don't need to have a friend group who kind of understands what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I saw this when I went to the Tiger 21 conference with my dad, and you just talk to some of these other people, and it's like, wow, we have a lot of just like random and very unique things that pop up. And you're like, who could I talk to this
Hmm.
about? Like, maybe you're close with your siblings, but maybe you're not. And so that's kind of where it was born, a space to come just talk about being a next gen and the things that come with it. And so I'm excited. It's new for me, just kind of beginning to explore this space. But I'm really excited to kind of bring people together and start to talk a little bit more about what next gens are navigating as they step through, and how unique that is between different generations, different family types, different levels of wealth. I think there's so much uniqueness, but also a lot of common threads in there that I'm excited to dive into more.
Yeah. Well, speaking as someone who comes from that next gen, from your target demographic at one time, you know, the, the idea that there would be some, like, thinking about the need for that, I can understand why people that maybe haven't been exposed to growing up in this kind of dynamic, or in being a next gen in a family business, or of wealth or anything like that, that they might not understand. Well, why would you need that? But coming from that perspective, when I came into this family business, there were a lot of emotions. There were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of those feelings like, am I entitled? Am I being entitled? And then like pushing in the opposite direction. Am I like thinking too minimally of myself? Am I pushing myself down? Am I feeling shame? There's a lot of emotions like that come up. And I know
Yeah.
it may be common for people to think like, poor me. Oh yeah, poor, but because of that. But it's also, everybody is dealing with issues. Everybody is dealing with something, and that includes, there's people that are come from families of wealth, or people that come from families where they have businesses. It is a challenge, and it's not all like you see it on television. So
Yeah.
I thank you for having the courage to bring that up and actually be more bringing community around that, because
Yeah.
community is what's healing, and ultimately what's gonna drive that forward and help people to be more resourceful than entitled.
Yeah. And when people with resources feel resourceful and can do things like, I'm going to step into the family business and I'm going to run it and I'm going to take it to the next generation, or we're going to sell it, or we're going to grow it to the point where now we start a family foundation. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
that also we can do with the resources that we've been given, and we can harness that. And it doesn't have to be what you see on TV of these trust fund kids doing all this crazy stuff. Like, that's not the reality
Right.
for
It's
the
really not.
majority of next gens. We're just trying to figure out our place and be good people, and take care of others, our families, our friends, and our communities. And I think we're in a really unique position to kind of jump off higher and step into the world and do that. So it's really fun and exciting. And I was like, do I need to ask my sisters and my family if I can do this thing? Because it's very like uncomfortable to
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. And so that's just, I was like, well, if I could create a space and help one other person feel like they're living their purpose in the world, then it's all worth it. So
Yeah. I think it's a good thing in mass, because it's even, I think the very fact that it feels uncomfortable is part of the reason why there's not a resource like that already, and why so many people may struggle with it. And so I think, yeah, it's important, and important to have that resource there. And I wonder, if is there a path you help people go down to help them to learn or know or understand about themselves if they're a right fit for continuing on the legacy of the family business or maybe starting their own business. You went through that journey yourself of self-discovery. Is there a way that you help others do that?
Yeah, so this is all newer for me. We have a program called the Pathfinder, which really is, what are my strengths? What am I excited about? Where am I going? And as you start to think about that, you start to see the paths. You start to see the options. I've always been a big fan of experimentation, and I think when we're next gen, sometimes we have opportunities to do that. So, okay, you've tried the family, like working in the family business, like what else is it that you think you might be interested in doing? Is there some way to essentially prototype that type of thing to see like, oh yeah, that I actually do have a lot of excitement around that, or oh, it was fun a couple times, but actually it's not quite there. So
Right.
I'm imagining kind of just this ecosystem to help people work through thinking about those types of things, those different paths as they begin to explore, and for me to just be there and help bounce ideas off and give an outside perspective as they do that.
Well, that's exciting. It's really exciting to hear that coming up, and I'm glad you're doing it. And if you're out there listening and you feel maybe alone or lost or struggling with that idea, know that you have a next gen friend in Andrea Carpenter, and you can reach out and she can help you with that. Speaking of which, Andrea, where can people find you if they want to get in touch for the Transition Strategists or Next Gen Friend? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so for your next gen friend, that's just yournextgenfriend.com. I have my email newsletter up there, and I would love to just stay in touch with you as we go through that. And for the transition strategists, we've found that kind of that first conversation can be one of the things that's the trickiest from an owner perspective. Like, how do I actually talk about this with my kids for the first time? And for a successor, like, what are the questions I should even be asking if I believe I want to stay in the family business and I'm trying to figure out those next steps. So we have a resource. You can get that at letstalktransition.com/Adam. And I will put that resource up there for you to grab. And there's a lot of components in there around just what's the timing of the transition? What are you thinking about the paths? What are your main objectives and outcomes? So some really good resources for you to start thinking about that transition.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for offering that up and for offering that as a resource. I know there's a lot of people that do struggle with that transition, and often they approach it too late. So if you're listening to this now and you're 5, 10 years out, 15, maybe even more, it's never too early to plan for that transition and make sure that you have that plan in place. So please take that seriously. Visit letstalktransition.com/Adam and your next gen friend, and reach out to Andrea and start a conversation about your next steps and what your next passion project will be. Andrea, thank you so much for being here. This was real pleasure, a tremendous value. So thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone out there. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, do all the things. Really appreciate you. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.